Hey, welcome to Left Hook. I'm Scott. Today we're going to be talking about Trump's blatant corruption. I'm going to discuss the history of corruption that Trump has, and then I'm going to be joined by my partner in crime, Jenna, to talk about Trump's current corruption scandals, meme coin, and the $4 million jet that somehow is perfectly okay for him to take and is definitely not a bribe from the government of Qatar. And then to follow up on a previous story, we're going to discuss the removal of David Hogg as one of the vice chairs of the national DNC. So stick with us. Round one. So Biden was a puppet. I think we kind of figured that out from recent news stories about his mental decline. Now, he was a puppet because he was in his decline and didn't really know any better as time went on. That's not an excuse, but one could argue that while he was inept and arrogant, it's hard to find real evidence that he was, in the traditional sense, actually corrupt, despite what certain right wingers online would love to say about a certain laptop his son owned. Uh, Trump, on the other hand, despite claiming in the 2017 election that he was too rich to be bought, showed from the very beginning of his first presidency that he has a price tag that can be paid by any interested party to get whatever they want. He shows again and again that he only cares about two things: the glory and the prestige that comes with being the president, without having to do any of the actual work that comes along with that position, and to be richer and richer, regardless of what he needs to do to get that way. Now, let's talk a little bit about how Trump shows that he's the most corrupt, bought and paid for puppet president to ever sit in the White House. First off, let's go way back to whenever Trump had a judgment against him for literally stealing from his own charity. So this is the office of Letitia James. Trump pays court-ordered $2 million for illegally using Trump Foundation funds. So he was forced to pay more than $2 million in a court-ordered damages to 8 different charities for illegally misusing charitable funds of the Trump Foundation for political purposes. The statement says, not only has the Trump Foundation been shut down for misconduct, but the president has been forced to pay $2 million for misusing charitable funds for his own political gain. Charities are not a means to an end, which is why these damages speak to the president's abuse of power and represent a victory for not-for-profits that follow the law. And the funds have finally gone to where they deserve, 8 credible charities. Now, that's bad enough. But whenever you see a detailed breakdown of some of the things that he stole this money from the charity to do, it's laughable. What's your favorite act of misusing or stealing funds from charity on the list of violations? Number one, when Trump had his 2020 campaign, put the foundation's name on promotional materials and ceremonial checks related to fundraisers that he as a candidate was hosting. When he used $100,000 of Trump Foundation money, raised almost entirely from other people, to settle an ordinance dispute with his Mar-a-Lago club vacation home that they were having with the city of Palm Beach. So he used the money to settle a lawsuit with the city of Palm Beach for his own personal club. When he used $157,000 of Trump Foundation money to settle a legal dispute with a man who'd won $1 million hole-in-one prize during an event held by another charity at Trump's golf course in New York, which the outside charity was purchased hole-in-one insurance and was responsible for denying the man his prize. So they tried to stiff this guy on $1 million prize, and Trump had to end up paying him $157,000 and just went ahead and just took that out of a charity to do so. Classy. When he used $25,000 of the charity's money to make a donation to the political group that then supported Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, familiar name, at the same time as Bondi was considering whether to sue Trump University for defrauding its students. Probably know all about the Trump University scandal, but we'll go into that another time. Bondi ended up, for some reason, after her political group received $25,000 from Trump's charity, decided not to sue him over that. Weird, huh? That probably was the beginning of the resume that Trump loved for making her attorney general. Number five, whenever he used the Trump Foundation to pay $5,000 to put an advertisement for Trump International Hotel in D.C. into a program distributed at another charity fundraising event, just good. So advertising for his hotel using charity money. $10,000 of Trump Foundation money to buy a painting of himself that hung in one of his resorts in Miami. Bear in mind, you could tell this guy was not on the level whenever he refused to reveal his tax returns. So many of the reasons why he might not have revealed his tax returns, which no other president's ever refused to do, ever. Every other president has revealed their tax returns. You're going to find that Trump's got a lot of firsts in this list. First one not to do that, most likely to try to hide how rich he actually is, or was at the time, that he may not pay or hasn't paid his fair share of taxes, which they kind of proved later that he wasn't paying his taxes properly, which we'll get into that in a moment. Another checkbox on the corruption list. $73 million refund. We learned that Trump had applied for a $73 million refund in 2010 in response to this request. Trump may have loans to foreign countries or individuals, which would potentially and probably do compromise him in his role as commander-in-chief. And he probably doesn't donate much or anything to charity. Just a number of potential reasons why he might not have wanted to reveal his tax returns. Next thing, not divesting from his holdings. The emoluments clause keeps you from being able to benefit from being in office. It also stipulates that you should divest from any holdings that could potentially benefit you directly because of your role as president. Well, Trump businesses have received millions in foreign payments while he was in office. It's the way that he's done this is actually pretty ridiculous and pretty obvious. So Trump has repeatedly and willingly violated the U.S. Constitution by allowing his businesses to accept millions of dollars from the most corrupt nations in the world. His four businesses owned by Trump's family conglomerate received $7.8 million in payments in total from 20 countries during his first 4 years in the White House. It added that those payments probably represented a fraction of foreign payments to the Republican president and his family during that time period. The Foreign Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution bars the acceptance of gifts from foreign states without congressional consent. It says here, the limited records that there was a committee that investigated this, and the limited records the committee obtained showed that while Trump was in office, he received more than $5.5 million from the Chinese government and Chinese state-owned enterprises. He was, as well as millions more from 19 other foreign governments, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Qatar? Really? We'll get back to that nation. I think most people know what's coming up. United Arab Emirates, Malaysia, 4 other countries, etc., etc., etc. The government making these payments sought specific foreign policy outcomes from President Trump and his administration. Each dollar accepted violated the Constitution's strict prohibition on payments from foreign governments. I mean, it should be obvious and clear. Now, what I find amazing, not only is this obvious pay for play with other governments, but look at what he did just to profit specifically from being president. Trump overcharged Secret Service by 300% for accommodations at his hotels. Now, this is ripping off the American people directly. So, according to this report, he billed government for Secret Service accommodations at his hotels many times over what other guests were charged. Now, keep this in mind, the reason why he's able to do this is the Secret Service is required to follow around and protect the president. A large entourage of Secret Service and other government employees who were required to stay near the president. So he chose, because he's still invested in his properties, to have these Secret Service and other government employees stay at his facilities, where they're paying his companies to stay there. And he's overcharging them up to triple what he would charge anyone else. Not only did the former President Trump D.C. hotel routinely charge the Secret Service more than the government rate, it frequently charged the Secret Service more than it did other patrons, including members of a royal family and a Chinese business interest. His son had actually gone on and said that the employees for the Secret Service stay at our properties for free, which was an obvious and blatant public lie. He enriched himself by overcharging government employees for staying in his own hotels, knowing they couldn't do anything else. Even more recently, during the campaign in 2024, Trump was actually sued, and successfully, by the state of New York for $364 million for defrauding the IRS and banks by either inflating or undervaluing the value of his properties. Because they found that what he had done was he had inflated the value of his properties on paper whenever he would give those values over to the banks to try to get loans against the banks. And that would help him secure larger amounts of money at lower interest rates by lying about his property's value. And then he would, when it came time to report the properties to the IRS to be taxed on them, to pay property tax, he would severely undervalue them so that he didn't have to pay as much. And when it didn't take a lot for, once they got a hold of the paperwork, for the government to look at the IRS paperwork and the bank paperwork and go, something doesn't add up here. So it was a pretty slam dunk case for the state. Again, I don't know if he's ever actually been made to pay it, but it's just another instance of his blatant corruption. I mean, he's the most dishonest, and this is saying something because American politicians are incredibly dishonest, nearly to the one. But he's the most dishonest ever. I mean, there's just he's the LeBron James of corruption when it comes to comparing him to other presidents and other politicians. Period. What drives me crazy is that conservatives have lost their mind for years over Hunter's laptop, with months of hearings that they put together, tying up news and government committees, ending in no real credible evidence whatsoever. But they didn't bat an eye whenever his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who he had enlisted to negotiate diplomatic relations in the Middle East, right after President Trump left office, received $2 billion in investments to manage for Saudi Arabia. Remember we talked about Saudi Arabia earlier and how they bribed Trump by paying exorbitant fees to stay in his hotels. Often, by the way, without actually showing up to stay. Very often they would just pay for the rooms, sometimes hundreds of rooms at a time, and then very few of them would actually show up to stay if anyone did. Blatant bribery. So Kushner was given a $2 billion investment despite the fact that he had no experience with private equity whatsoever. His company, Affinity Partners, raised over $3 billion in capital, with about $2 billion of that coming from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which is essentially their slush fund in Saudi Arabia. In fact, the Crown Prince actually personally intervened to approve the investment and overruled a panel of investors who called the sum that they were going to invest unsatisfactory in all aspects. Essentially, the other Saudi investors there said, why are we giving this bonehead $2 billion to invest when he has no experience doing it? And the Crown Prince went, yeah, y'all know why, right? I mean, y'all know why. So he had developed a close relationship with the prince while he served as Trump, the White House advisor and a diplomat, helping to improve a $110 million weapons sale to Saudi Arabia after it had faced public backlash from the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Oversight committees, especially Jamie Raskin, who's a Democrat, had continuously pushed for a committee to investigate Kushner's deal. You know, the same way that James Comer and the Republicans tried to invest Hunter Biden's laptop. They did that for forever. Kushner never even got one committee hearing. He was lucky if any Republicans would ever even mention Kushner's name or the fact that he got this. And I'm going to bring Jenna on to discuss amazingly blatant corruption from the meme coin that he launched right before he went into office, and then now the latest in the corruption train of the $400 million plane from Qatar, the essentially flying palace, as they've put it, that he just accepted. The point that I want to make here before I even bring Jenna on is people, if you wonder why people accept this corruption from Trump, because I often do. I often wonder, how can you see all these things from all the way back in 2017? How do people accept this? And honestly, I think it comes down to one simple thing. He does it in the open. I think that normal people, the average everyday person, when they know they're doing something wrong, they try to hide it. They try to slip it under the rug. They try to be sly about it. That's what certainly most politicians do. Well, Trump doesn't do that. He hides his corruption under this plain speaking bluntness where he says what he's doing is fine and just says it over and over again to the point where it makes you believe it. He's just so open and doesn't try to hide, only justify what he's doing. And I really think that's why his supporters don't just accept it, but they encourage it and they celebrate his corruption as a feature, like he's getting one over on his enemies every time he does something corrupt. Every time he personally benefits, despite the fact that it could be at the same time hurting them. Now, with very few exceptions, Trump has no ideology, I think, outside of making himself more wealthy and just getting praise. So he's just an open vessel for oligarchs and foreign countries and Christian fundamentalists, that they can just pour their desires through him to get their agendas enacted. And that's how he's a puppet. You know, I mean, like, for example, he took $270 million from Elon, then opened the doors to all American sensitive information, gave him access to gut agencies that were holding him accountable, so that he could get a get out of jail free card for his own actions and profit much more than the $270 million off of that investment in the president. So while the Trump administration and Musk try to get us to look the other way, saying that they're eliminating fraud, supposedly by everyday Americans, like welfare fraud, Social Security, and Medicaid fraud, federal employees that are suckling off the government teat while bringing no real value, according to them, and accusing migrants of supposedly cheating the system and stealing jobs. What Trump is really doing is shifting the blame for fraud and waste from himself and his corrupt, elite, decadently rich friends, and turning the working class against each other. And we can't point up at the real crooks if we're pointing at our neighbors and the vulnerable instead. So, looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are on what I said here, and looking forward to coming up next, talking to Jenna about current corruption in the Trump administration. Get ready for round 2. So now I'm joined by my partner in crime, Jenna. How are you doing today, Jenna?
Doing good, guys. How you doing?
Good. So, been talking a little bit about Trump's corruption, the way he's kind of soiling the presidential seat as he goes along, and so wanted to come up now to the current things that he's doing right this second. So, the meme coin that he put out right before he came into office, which is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a avenue for just basically blatant bribes, is essentially what it's there for. I mean, the Republicans talked for years about how, Biden supposedly sold, Hunter Biden supposedly sold access to his dad. Well, Trump is selling direct access to himself by putting out this meme coin. And I know my audience may not know a ton about what Bitcoin is, or what meme coin is. And we'll talk just a little bit about that. You don't need to know a lot about it, other than and I've got a video that I'm going to show which will give a little bit of that information. But basically, it's a direct way to pour money anonymously into an account that the Trumps either benefit from directly or benefit from fees associated with transactions to and from this account. So Do you know much about crypto coin or Bitcoin or meme coin or any of that stuff?
No, I've never learned much about it, mostly because of people who were always trying to teach me I wouldn't trust to hold my beer, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Um, but from what I do understand, it's especially involving Trump is always not his first foray into this, basically just a way to launder money.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like when he sells all his cards, right? $99 a piece, up to 100 is your limit, 9,900, right below that $10,000 limit where you got to report it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
He was
it's
doing
pretty
that
obvious to me.
with those
Yeah.
trading cards or whatever that he had a few years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And this is similar to that same kind of racket. Yeah, his meme coin, he racks up fees, and buyers have a chance to get direct access to him. So basically, according to this, it's generated more than $320 million in fees for its creators, which is analysis from Chain Access. And on Monday, Trump promoted a dinner he was set to attend on the 22nd, which he did, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, where 220 holders of the meme coin were going to get to go to dinner with him directly. So let me show you this CBS News report. It kind of breaks down a little bit about what it is and how it gives access. And I think this is really a useful explainer for people who don't really understand the nature of this scam.
With top buyers of his cryptocurrency at his golf club in Virginia last night. His family's use of the meme coin has raised ethical and legal concerns because of how much money it makes the president and his family businesses personally. CBS News political investigative producer Madeline May joins me now. It's so great to have you with us, Madeline. To help my audience, help the audience wrap their mind around this dinner that the president attended, help us understand what this coin is, how the Trump family businesses make money off of it, and why this dinner was a way for that process to get even more amplified.
Trump coin is a crypto token that people can buy on an online marketplace. So in the same way that you might be familiar with Bitcoin,
Okay.
Trump coin is similar to that, except that Trump coin is a lot more volatile in price, and that's why people describe it as a meme coin. So the president has sold sneakers and he's sold Bibles, but he also sells this crypto token. And it's different than Bitcoin. It's different than other cryptocurrencies because the president's family benefits directly financially from this coin, and it's heavily branded by him.
And it benefits when the price goes up, and it benefits when there's any transaction on the buy or sell side. Is that right?
So several companies associated with the president own a majority stake in Trump coin, which means that when the value of the coin increases, the Trump family's value and net worth also increases. And there's also transaction fees associated with buying and selling the coin. So every time somebody buys or sells Trump coin, the Trump family and other backers are making money.
And I want to just step in here real quick and say, I mentioned it earlier, when it comes to buying like Bitcoin or meme coin, any of this cryptocurrency, there is no transparency about who owns the wallet that the Bitcoin goes into. So whoever buys it creates sort of a user account, and the same way that I would create an email address or a Blue Sky account or a Facebook account that it has, well, not Facebook, not exactly, but anything that doesn't really require you to put your real information in there, you can just create this account that's essentially anonymous. Which doesn't mean that a lot of these people don't take credit for buying the coin, but you don't have to. And the issue with that, obviously, is that you've got anybody from a corporation to another country to an individual who wants to influence policy and get something from the President of the United States just can influence the president by buying the coin. So just wanted to put that forward before we listen to the rest of this.
We talked to one analytics firm that said the Trump family and other backers have probably made more than $300 million since January off of Trump coin.
Who is Donald Quinby, and was he there last night?
Donald Quinby is the chief financial officer of a freight trucking company, and their company specializes in moving goods between Mexico and the United States. that business has been pretty severely impacted by the president's evolving tariff strategy. And so what Donald decided to do was, and his company decided to do, was buy $2 million of Trump coin in order to get the president's attention. And specifically, they're advocating for free and fair trade. And they're hoping that by making this purchase, the president would pay attention and they could possibly shift things in their favor.
So this is a directly paying something for influence over the president's scheme. Now, this guy is not important, this Donald Quinby and this particular company. They're actually kind of small fish, even at the $2 million.
That investment actually was not enough to get them invited to the gala that happened this week. But they have, according to SEC filings we looked at, they have $20 million they're willing to spend in order to get the president's attention through buying Trump coin.
So very quickly, even though this person wasn't at the gala, he thought it was a way to get the president's attention, and we might fairly conclude others who did buy enough Trump coin to attend that gala thought as well.
The Trump gala this week was an invite-only dinner at the President's Virginia luxury golf course. And so the 220 top holders of Trump coin got to attend this swanky dinner, and that was attended by the president. On average, it looks like attendees spent $1 million a person to go to that event, meaning that attendees bought $1 million a person of Trump coin in order to see the president. And I'd like to talk about one of the attendees in particular, whose
Very
name,
quickly. Go
his
ahead.
name's Justin Sun, and he's a Chinese crypto billionaire who was recently investigated by the SEC, and those investigations were dropped under the Trump administration, and he's now the top holder of Trump coin.
Fascinating. I'm glad you included that. Madeline May, thank you.
So, pretty clear, direct pay for play. I mean, this one, trucking company guy trying to influence policy by buying this coin. And again, that's small fry. There are so many companies out there that have much more than $2, $3, $20, $50 million to throw at this. And the return on investment could be amazing. Or you have guys like this other guy, this Soon character, who was under investigation by the Justice Department, and somehow his investigation mysteriously vanished. And he's one of the top holders of meme coin. And no possible connection between those two things, right? But that's how blatant and out in the open the corruption is with this government and with Trump. So, I mean, why do you think, I have my own thoughts, why do you think that Trump is willing to go right out in the open and do this, and why so many of his supporters, both in political circles and out in just the regular folks, are willing to let him get away with this clear bribery?
Because either you're a part of it or you're the mark.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. He's been grifting them for the past 10 years, longer. If you look back at any of his business history, right?
Right.
How do you bankrupt a casino? His dad got in trouble for dropping off $2 million at a casino and just walking out. Basically, it was an off the books loan because he was doing so bad at that.
Right.
He put small businesses out, right? Didn't pay any of his contractors. Had the audacity to brag about his building being the tallest building in New York City after 9/11 now. He's a Nepo baby. He's not very smart, but he is an excellent salesman. He knows how to pick his marks, and he found a really good group to do it too.
And that's
That's
what confuses me sometimes. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. The evangelicals are prime because they already believe shit without facts, faith. So they're actually a really good target to hit because as long as they believe it hard enough, right? It's like Pinocchio syndrome. You can become a real boy. And if any of these people had the bootstraps or the mentality or the work ethic to be the billionaires, like they all claim, oh, we've got a chance to be a billionaire, then why aren't you?
Yeah.
You aren't. You're not smart enough. You don't have the right connections. He doesn't know who any of you are, and you're willing to throw your community under the bus, your family members, some of your children, all of this for what? For some man who doesn't even know you exist. It's pathetic. And we have a mental health problem in this country. But he does have swagger. He is a good salesman. I will give him that. He's deviously smart.
Right.
And what people see in him, I don't know. I really don't. It's a mystery.
I'm the same. I don't see how he fools as many people as he fools. I've never really been able to see it. It's always been pretty obvious that he's, the shadiest of the shady.
Sure.
And yeah, and I don't know if there's actually something that they like about him or something that they're missing about him, or if it's a little bit of both. Because I think it's obvious to those of us who are able to see through him. And let me talk about one more thing before, and then we'll really discuss, I think, and drill down on what my thoughts are, and I think why he is able to get away with this stuff. So, one other thing that's happening right now, just literally happened this week, was he accepted a $400 million Qatari jet gift from the country of Qatar. So he accepted this on Wednesday. The government finally accepted this. So for those of you who haven't heard the story, if you've been under a rock for the last couple of weeks, Trump was offered a $400 million luxury palace in the sky Boeing jet from the country of Qatar in the Middle East. He, as opposed to what the law says and what any other president would have done, and just deny and say no thank you on the obvious bribe, he instead chided a CBS reporter who asked him why he thought it was okay to take the jet, and called them stupid and say we'd be stupid not to take this free gift. And he keeps claiming over and over again that this is a gift to the United States government and to the military. But part of the deal is that in his third year in office, a year before he leaves office, the ownership of the jet is going to change hands from the U.S. military to the Trump National Library, essentially directly into Trump's hands. This is a direct gift to him at that point. So this is an obvious and clear bribe for Qatar. The same way that them giving Saudi Arabia bribed Jared with his $2 billion, investment that they gave to him to manage, and all the other business dealings that they've given to Trump in their nations in order to gain his favor. So
we still have that. We have that peace in the Middle East, though. So thank you, Jared, for that.
Well, that's what. Yeah.
Over there right now?
So much peace over there right now, isn't there?
Lord.
So much peace. Just peace coming out their ears. Ask the people of Palestine how much peace there is going on over in the Middle East right now. Ask Israel. Ask Iran how much peace is going on. Syria, tons of peace all over the place out there. Jared did a bang up job. But a lot of even people on Trump's own side have been calling this out. Now, obviously, we Democrats, those of us who have any integrity, have been saying this is ridiculous. There's no reason you should possibly do this. But Rand Paul, who I have no love for, he's an asshole. But he said it at least gives the appearance of a conflict of interest. Mike Pence, his former vice president, said it was inconsistent with our security. And then I kind of want to hit this real quick. Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire even came out and just ripped Trump on this thing. I can't count on one hand the number of times that I've agreed with Ben Shapiro about anything in my entire life. But the quote from him is actually really good. So what he says here is, he says, taking sacks of goodies from people who support Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, Al Jazeera, and all the rest, it's not America first. Like, please define America in a way that says you can take sacks of cash from the Qatari royals who are behind Al Jazeera. It just isn't America first in any conceivable way. So back to the original question, is this good for President Trump? Is it good for his agenda? Is it good for draining the swamp and getting things done? The answer is no, it isn't. It isn't. If you want President Trump to succeed, this kind of skeezy stuff needs to stop. And here's the thing, it's already having an impact, which it is having an impact. People are seeing that this is clear and blatant corruption. And before we talk too much about that, just the ethics of it, and we'll drill down on that, absolutely. But this jet is not the gift to the American people that you think it is, because this jet is not outfitted right out front to be Air Force One. It's outfitted to be a mansion in the sky, absolutely. All these 747-8s are. But the Air Force One is a completely bigger thing than that. It has to be essentially a floating, flying White House. So it has to have all these incredible upgrades done to it. It has to essentially be stripped down and put back together and customized in a way for Air Force to be an Air Force One. What would it cost? So President Trump stressed this would be free, but Fortune magazine says that the Boeing 747 Qatar donated to Air Force One fleet costs roughly $4 million new, but outfitting the jet to fit presidential requirements may end up costing up to or more than $1 billion, according to experts. This is actually a plane that the Qataris had purchased and were having a hard time getting rid of. They couldn't sell this plane because this specific type of plane is out of service. Like, nobody's making these. So they had a hard time getting rid of it, so they just tried to dump it on Trump because he saw it once and thought it looked pretty. And they went, hey, the President of the United States likes this thing. We can't sell it, so let's just give it to him. But it's going to end up costing at least twice as much as the value of the plane to the American people. It's going to take years to upgrade. So he may never take an actual presidential flight on this plane before it gets turned over to him. And it will have cost us $1 billion to upgrade. So that's even separate, completely separate from it just being a blatant bribe. So
it's, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like he's playing in everyone's faces, and a third of this country doesn't see it. And they're not even mad. I'm irritated because it's so obvious. So how do you not see it? And if it was just, hey, you're harming yourself, so be it. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but this is impacting all of us. All of these decisions, right? What happened to Doge? Do you think Doge would approve of this expenditure? Would this be a Doge approved expense? No, this is one of the things they cut. But can you believe they got another Air Force One when we already have two in the works, two in activity?
That's a great point.
Get a fifth one. That's what we need. And by the time it gets outfitted, the technology is going to need to be updated again. So it's just, it was an appeal to Trump's ego, because honestly, all these people, that's all you have to do with him is appeal to his ego, and you can do whatever you want with him. It's very obvious.
He's a child.
Appeal to his ego, give him some money, something that is tacky gold, right? Coated in tacky gold, and something that he can brag about. That it does nothing. It did nothing for us. Absolutely nothing. And every deal he's made, right? We got a plane. What did they get? He gets a golf course. He gets a personal real estate, something or other, through his family. The American people never benefit from this. We don't need a fifth Air Force One.
No, we don't. That's a great point that you just made. There are 2 Air Force Ones flying right now. There's 2 more in the works at Boeing, which those have been delayed actually, but they're going to be coming out in the next couple of years. And then now we've got this 5th plane that we just got donated, and that'll cost us the taxpayers another $1 billion. It's funny that you talk about why they don't see it. I think, and I talked about this a little bit earlier. I think not for all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but I think for a lot of them, they see it and they enjoy it. I think every time he gets to break the rules, every time he gets to shatter the norms and do something corrupt, they secretly love it. They love that the rules no longer apply anymore. It's a permission structure. The same way as him saying racist shit out loud and homophobic shit out loud that politicians weren't doing before him. Not really. Not recently, anyway. He brought all that old school racism and homophobia back whenever he started doing his speeches back in 2017 and then ever since then. But I think it gives a permission structure to them to just be corrupt. Like, it becomes okay. Trump can do it, and he's our deity, and so they love it. They don't just accept it, they really like it. They enjoy seeing him do this. They're cheer it on online. It's sickening to see, but I really think that's part of what it is.
I hope it's worth their children's futures. I don't have kids. I've got no dog in this fight. You guys want to ruin the schools? You want to defund Medicaid and Medicare and any sort of hope for home ownership for your children so you can own the libs? Guys, we don't care. We're not crying. We've never said we were tolerant. The fact that you're reacting the way you are now proves how tolerant we were. We're just starting to match energies now. We are meaner than you are because we have bigger hearts. Like, our love comes And our protection comes from a place of love. Y'all's comes from a place of selfishness and hate. And I don't understand who hurt you as a child. She needs some therapy. But I was not
Generational
my dog
trauma,
running.
probably, yeah.
It is.
Although I'm going to segue into the next thing that I want to talk about, which the corruption is not entirely on the Republican side of the aisle, although it's much, much more prominent in that. So I'm going to take us to round three. David Hogg, who we covered a couple of weeks ago. In David Hogg is, and I'm going to just real quick, we've talked about it in that video, but just for a primer, survivor of a school shooting, started a anti-gun, gun control nonprofit with a bunch of other kids who also survived those. He's been politically active since he was a teenager. He's now 25 years old. He just recently won an election to be one of the vice chairs for the Democratic National Committee. Very important position. Not a paid position, which I think is a little weird. It's pretty strange that that's a voluntary, unpaid position, but comes with all that authority over the national party. Although I think what we're going to show here is that he doesn't have a lot of authority, unfortunately, because what they did, the National Party just essentially voided the election that Hogg and another vice chair was elected during. This article from The Nation talks about the DNC's latest feud is an exercise in futility. Bickering more like a political science department than an opposition party. Hogg, 25-year-old survivor of 2018 Parkland shooting, has called for Democrats. This was what got him in trouble, guys. Called for Democrats to recruit younger candidates and rethink many of the party's status quo positions to reverse its plummeting appeal among young white men and other low-propensity voters. What he had done is he vowed to create a PAC that was going to try to raise $20 million to primary safe Democratic seats and districts that were always going to go Democrat. No way they'd ever go Republican. But primary Democrats who were just kind of sitting on their asses, collecting their paychecks, collecting whatever other side money they were going to get, and not doing anything to help people, to help their constituents. Well, the National Committee wasn't going to have any of that because we all know that the DNC is basically a Make-A-Wish foundation for old Democratic politicians. It just gives them, whatever they want as long as they stick around long enough. Seniority being the main thing about the DNC rather than actual effectiveness. So he decided he had enough of that, seeing Democratic numbers cratering, which they are, because they're seen as being ineffectual, where he wants to change, even if it doesn't change how actually effective these Democrats would have been in these safe districts. It would have at least given the impression that we were fighting and we were willing to change and evolve and get better at doing this. But again, the DNC would not put up with that.
I think it was very cowardly, especially because they cited the gender parity rule, which means one female, one male, right? Mm-hmm. A rule that's been in place, they knew was always in place. So it wasn't that they were super sorry they broke that rule, right? But when they started not being able to, Frankenstein couldn't control his monster any longer, that's when they had a problem and started fishing out the loopholes. And that's why I don't trust any political party. Like, I don't trust the RNC or the DNC. They look out to protect their own. And I know there's some nuance to this, but I really do believe that they are two sides of the same coin. They're all
at the national level, absolutely.
Yeah. They're bought by corporate America. The AIPAC, Israel owns our country, and it's probably almost more prevalent on the blue side than the red side. But to watch something like Jared Kushner's father be confirmed as a ambassador to France, right? Mm-hmm. He got voted in 100-0. Why? Why would you have voted for that? Who cares if you think it's performative? That's why people are pissed that there is no backbone. There would have been easy no vote. He would have gotten it. But you don't have to go along with it. You can sit there and be like, yeah, you don't need my vote for this, but I'm still going to say no. And you don't see that very often. And honestly, there's only a few people out there that I think are willing to buck the system Because at this point, it's, like it said, it's an exercise in futility. And it's also the very definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, right? Expecting a different outcome. And
Right.
it's not changing. And the fact that so many people supported what David Hogg was doing, I think um, they didn't listen to us, right? They
Yeah.
said, "No, no, no, kids, be quiet. We got this. We're going to keep letting people die of cancer in their 80s so we have empty seats," instead of appointing Jasmine Crockett or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right, to ranking members on oversight committees.
Getting back to Hogg, this is something else I wanted to touch on here. Before they did this, if this doesn't tell you that there was a connection between this procedural thing that they used to oust him, they actually, the DNC chair asked him to sign a neutrality pledge to keep him from launching this pact that he was going to launch. Doubled down. They asked him to do that. Take a neutrality pledge or step down is what the DNC chair asked Hogg to do before they find, and he said no. He said he was never going to do this. And so I love how what he says here. Some critics have wrongly framed this as an effort to shut people out of the party or discourage contested primaries, Martin wrote. This is this chair. Let me be unequivocal. That's not only false, it's the opposite of what I stand for. But look what happened.
Yeah.
He's the same guy who talked about how when people were talking about how billionaires were bad, he said, no, there are good billionaires. We'll take money from good billionaires. That was this guy's attitude. Is as long as the money keeps flowing in, he doesn't care. That's what the DNC has become, is a money-making machine, and the Democrats think that you can just throw as much money at an election as possible, and that's how you win. And I think we saw clearly that wasn't the case with this last election.
Unless you can openly write a check, they're not interested in doing the work. And that's why I stood behind coming back around to what David Hogg is doing. It has nothing to do with my opinion on him as a person. I don't know him, but I like the idea, right?
Same
I'm not
here.
looking for perfection. Just challenge the status quo because it's not working. We have
Not
nothing to
working.
lose.
Yes, that's the main point. It's
just
broken.
not working.
Right. We need to fix it. We need to do something, anything. And the DNC has learned no lessons from last time. They're still just in the same, we're not Trump, we're not as bad as the Republicans mode. And that's what they keep running on. We're not as bad as them. Instead of running on progressive issues that poll pop as incredibly popular, they don't want to move anything forward. They just want to keep us from sliding backwards. The bill that just passed the House, the budget bill, which is terrible, and we should do a whole show on how bad it is here shortly, and we will.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
It's awful. It's so bad.
I
But
think it'll be DOA in the Senate, but
that
still,
passed.
the fact that they voted for it is crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, they might have the votes to do it with minimal changes, but that passed by one vote. Do you know why it passed by one vote instead of a tie? Because Jerry Connolly died less than a week ago. They waited for three Democrats have died since the election. 3 Democratic House members have died because they're a bunch of old people. And because all that matters is seniority, not effectiveness, they just wait for them to pass away, and then they hold a vote. I don't think it's a coincidence that they rushed to hold the vote a few days after Connolly kicked it, because they got it through by the one vote because of that. It passed because of that. So the Democrats are directly enabling the fascism and the backward slide by being incompetent. I mean, they're choosing to be as weak of an opposition party as they can possibly be, and handing more and more and more power to Trump and his Gestapo. And
Yeah.
we have to hold them accountable, and we have to not just hold them accountable, we have to do something about it. And David Hogg was trying to do that in a very tame way. Like, this wasn't even like a full-on assault on the Democratic Party. This was, we're just going to do this in really safe areas, and we're not going to change the makeup of the House. We're just going to put better people in those same seats. And like you said, they just went, no, can't do that. We owe Grandpa over here a chance to be on this committee, so we got to keep him in power. But we need to be supporting Democrats at the local and state level so that those people can get into positions to make changes at that level, and then they can keep rising up through that chain to get to the national level so they can help fight these federal issues.
We have a generation of people who refuse to relinquish power and get out of the way, not only just so we can make things better, but younger people, the way the world is changing, younger people need to have more of a voice, need to have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I don't want Nancy Pelosi making decisions for me when she is 50 years older than me, 40 years older. She comes from another, she doesn't know what life is like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to your own parents, you know that. Talking to grandparents, they don't understand that there aren't a thing as pensions anymore. They really do not know how much it's changed out here.
Right.
My own mother thinks you can just walk in someplace and fill out a paper job application now and you should be hired, not a problem. They have no clue. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for them to die off, I think. Or we need to take a more proactive approach, like what David Hogg is doing, right?
Right.
And I think we're going to have to bite the bullet. I think it's time for, I don't see a two-party solution for this. The two-party system is done. I think on their side it's done. I think on our side it's done. And I think we need to stop fighting for what is, because it's not working. They won't let us try to reform it from the inside. So I think we need to gently do an Irish goodbye of the Democratic Party and start our own.
It's getting to that point where I don't know how you salvage what we've got completely whenever what we have now is being leveraged against people so effectively that I don't know how you help people without breaking what's already there completely and starting over with something more effective and more humane than what we have in place right now, because the system now is neither one of those things. So, but anyway,
I just think we just got to make sure that option's on the table. Just like when people insist on going to protest, like, no, we are strictly peaceful. I'm like, I'm not saying I condone violence, but if you take it off the table, you have no negotiating power. Yeah, maybe we'll get violent. You're less apt to fuck with people then, right? Like, no, we're just going to carry. They'll come beat the shit out of you. You won't even think about it. They'll report to work the next day and have pictures on social media. Look who I beat up. You cannot take the threat of action off the table for anything you do in life. It undermines your negotiating power. So it doesn't have to be violence. It doesn't have to be anything like that.
no,
But
good trouble.
yeah,
Some good
trouble.
trouble. Yeah.
Don't let them take you for granted. And that's exactly what the Democratic Party is doing.
Yeah.
Republican Party too. Republican Party is as well. They threw out their normal common sense Republicans with the bathwater too. So I don't know. Maybe we could find an unlikelihood of.
I think everybody wants change right now. Yeah, for sure.
Politics makes strange bedfellows, right?
Right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and cut us off here. Thanks for being on, Jenna. Really appreciate you talking to me about this stuff. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Hey guys, if you liked that video, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps the channel out. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Keep fighting.